Now for this review, I'm going to be diving only deep into a few songs because I think this album really needs to be heard multiple times to understand it in its glory. And me explaining it won't necessarily do it justice. I'm going to try my best to explain 3 songs that I feel are some of the most important and revolutionary ones of the album, but for the rest of them, I'm going to keep it kind of vague and just kind of introduce some of the motifs and ideas that this album is bringing into play. First on the list, Bilo Part 1. This song is about taking control of your own life, and it establishes that within the first speech of the song. There's a speech about like, blah blah blah, if you don't take control of your shit and then you're simply along for a ride. The song helps establish the core sound of the entirety of the 3 EPs. It has a simple chordal approach that helps guide listeners after the intro speech leaves intrigue. So in the beginning, it's not too complex theoretically wise, but it has a lot to offer in terms of the production scale, because it kind of gives you a little hint as to the electronic bits that he throws in, as well as the acoustic instruments such as the guitar, bass, and drums, and the way that he mixes them, which is very powerful, punchy, but he's not really diving into his theoretical side yet. It has nice development overall, and it really kind of is a good way to introduce the album without being too overbearing. I really enjoy that. And then when the bridge section comes, it creates a nice atmosphere of adventure and simple construct through minor chord alterations and a nice key circulation. Introduces the experimental nature of what you're going to hear in the future of the album. But just to kind of give a general rundown of what it's talking about, it's about taking control of your own life. That's what being along for a ride is referencing to. Which is expressed by the simplistic format of the earlier sections. He's adding layers and solos over the top of the few chords that he works with, but he can only give so much emotion with these borders. So in order to gain control of the emotional spectrum, he breaks away from the design track and designs his own format through the bridge and the theoretical modulations that he uses through minor alterations. He starts with Dorian, goes into a sort of augmented feel, and then really just kind of takes off from there. So that's really cool. Bilo Part 2. I'm going to read the speeches that happen within this song in the beginning because they're really hard to hear, and I got lyrics for them, so fuck yeah. I do not consider myself less ignorant than most people. I have been and still am a seeker, but I have ceased to question the stars and books. I have begun to listen to the teachings my blood whispers to me. So instead of trying to justify knowledge of the outside world, he's focusing on making himself a better person. For himself and the world around him. Beautiful. And then the next line says, no man has ever been entirely and completely himself, yet each one strives to become that, one in an awkward, the other in a more intelligent way, each as best as he can. Boom! Humans, bitch! What you should be working on. Are you working on yourself? Are you becoming a better person for the rest of the world? No, you're not, probably. You're on Facebook complaining about Trump. So go figure out your own life, bitch. The song hits hard and establishes the bridge between the vocals and the instrumental motif. The album really uses a nice motif of kind of introducing vocals throughout it, since vocals don't tend to lead what the song is about. Except for the few words which can kind of guide your interest and what to listen for within the music, but it's not necessarily a guidance, like that tells you how to feel all of the time in a very simplistic way. Fucking stupid. Another cool thing about the song is it expresses an Eastern vibe to the melodic overlay. You can tell this does this because it has influence within the primary vocal line that is definitely based off of Arabic scales. And I could talk hours about scales from Arabia, but that would probably bore you. It also has a nice mix between that and the Scottish influence with the bagpipe, which at the end of each phrase with the bagpipe, he does a little bit of that Arabic scale, which kind of ties back into the original song. And at 2 minutes and 55 seconds, it is a boner trip back to the top beginning of the song. The middle section talks about being true to oneself, in reference to Bilo Part 1, but more so ties in the electronic aspect as well. It really does a good job of tying in the guitar, drums, and bass heavy metal sound with the electronic kind of EDM sort of upscale drum and bass sound. I can't really explain it that well, but just listen to it and you'll see what I feel. Then we get introduced to a very prominent motif throughout this album series. which is the gospel changes. When I say gospel, I mean the modernized gospel music, of which you hear a lot of crazy musicians ripping over these crazy-ass chords. If you've ever seen Gospel Chops, then you know what the hell I'm talking about. If you haven't, just go watch Gospel Chops, listen to the backing tracks, listen to people solo over it. Just do it! But this is a really cool thing because it's kind of like the furthermost way that he can go into a more personal exploration and kind of get away from the things that are limiting him as a person through music. And it signifies influence to help oneself to become the best that he can. Referring back to the beginning line.
Soon, we better get busy making babies.
Next up is Bilo Part 3. This references back to Bilo Part 1 with the Dorian feel after the intro. Now, one thing about Dorian, if you don't know what Dorian is, it's a minor scale with a natural sixth. If you don't know what that means, that's basically like it's the sad scale with a hint of happiness and a hint of hope. Now, whenever he uses this scale, he tends to kind of bring in a lot new experimental, naturistic types of music afterwards. It kind of is a promise that he's breaking away from this constrained area. So, you have a lot to look forward to when you hear that. The song focuses more on featuring the nice atmosphere of the album with solos and chordal expansion. Bilo Part 4. This song has my favorite motif of the entire trilogy. The intro chords slightly signify hope and change throughout growth, but the piano's downsize at the end is truly humbling. Listen to this. The second motif enters in the song as well with the Lydian lick, this one. At 3 minutes and 1 second, amazing transition takes place from the verse-chorus format into the motif from the intro that has really nice modulations to lead into it. You really gotta listen to this entire song. This is probably my favorite one off of the first part. Second time through, the motif leads to the recital of the Dorian third time. Now again, Dorian signifies the growth through learning and faulting. The section after so falls nicely and almost signify a comeback. Kind of an uplift from the negative thing that is outlining the positive reach out that's happening. Third time motif gives me a boner by starting with only piano and finally puts the pieces together from verse-chorus structure and intro motif to finally establish the song's entirety. And at the end, there's a nice recital of the Bilo Part 1 speech. On to the next one! Electric Fields. Starts like Bilo Part 1, and I'm talking about Bilo the EP, not the song, but also the song Bilo Part 1 because it's the first song off of Bilo Part 1. It gets really confusing, my goodness. Anyways, Electric Fields starts like Bilo Part 1 with a constraint on the chords that uses the minor alterations to break away from the ride. Look at that! Dorian going to work again! Next on the list is Rise and Shine. This introduces the strings to the album, which are really amazing on the opening of the next EP. It has a nice time feel and expansion on the accents of the rhythms. And it's very happy, almost kind of reminds me of Mario, or like when Mario goes to the beach, or those forests with the really green and huge mushrooms. There's a mellow section that has a nice chord change to it that makes the song more euphoric. So it takes it from being this kind of cheery, happy song, and takes it to being like a, oh my god, I'm about to have an orgasm. Oh my god, this is right. Then we have a genty dank section with the modulation that is tasty as hell. This leads to an Arabian-esque guitar groove section, which gets really quiet, just funky. Love that shit. Then it returns to the original melody and feel. Nice circulation. Along for a ride. The song title that talks about what the album is mostly about. The frantic beginning kind of feels claustrophobic with the 7/8 time signature. And that's in eighth notes, not quarter notes, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can't count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's shorter than that. So you have to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, like that. But that's too hard for you. So if you can't handle that, can't handle different concepts, then leave this review, bitch. The bridge has another gospel feel, which almost seems like his exciting way to get away from being trapped as opposed to his more subtle tones, which suggests awareness rather than action. So the gospel's sort of an escape. It's his way to get away from all the negative shit. Then we have the return of the heavy section with a sax solo, which is kind of a nice recollection as to the earlier section of the song, kind of hinting at another bit of that doomy sadness coming back in. But then we get cut off by the gospel section number 2 with a sax solo over top of that. And it has a polyrhythm. These are what we call hemiolas. This is where 2 rhythms lay over top. That's where one rhythm's going, and the other one's going, That's what it sounds like, but a lot better on the album. Listen to the fucking song. This song seems as though it's a big breakaway from being along for a ride. So it's kind of cool how the song that's called Being Along for the Ride is the most that it's gotten away from being along from the ride thus far. However, the banter between the sort of hectic style almost beckons an idea of containing yourself within the societal standards that we're in. Strange Night, the Dream Theater song. Really don't have much to say about this, but other than it sounds like Systematic Chaos from Dream Theater. If you haven't heard that, that's a really good album too, my favorite one by Dream Theater. But the song sounds right off of it, and it's amazing. Check it out. Next on the list is the one I mentioned earlier, Mguni Amina. Now this is a fucking metal opera song. That should be all I have to say. Go listen to it. Here, I'll show you the main part that's amazing right now, in the beginning. So I haven't really been able to dive into the lyrics, but I've been able to figure out what the title means, and within Swahili it means Heaven Amen, which obviously hints at religion. The song is pretty menacing, and if he is talking about religion, you can bet he's not the biggest fan of it, which might tie into the fact that being within a religion kind of takes constraint on the person that you are, and if you kind of break away from that, you can be more so who you are, which can, no longer make you be along for a ride, and that might be what he's coming to. Or maybe he's just using it as an excuse to kind of create this device of constraint versus freedom, and using religion to do so through a song which is opera, which goes from, has a religious background, and I'm rambling. Alright, moving on. This song is a fucking thrill ride. No other way to explain it. Everything is fine. No, I'm not telling you that everything is fine. I mean, everything's alright. It's kind of warm down here, and my ass is getting sweaty. But the song's called Everything is Fine. Diversity, you ask? Well, this is all symphonic. So fuck you, metal haters. You want a song to listen to off of this masterpiece? Well, listen to this one, because this song is beautiful. Next on the list is Where Is Now. I don't have much to say about this, but it shits on your face with the metal scat solo at the end. And I kinda love it. Now comes the 3 most important songs off of this album that I have to just explain in depth because they are wonderful. If you disagree, you suck! These are the songs Smile, Nostalgia, and Wrinkle Maze, which Wrinkle Maze will probably make you cry. It almost made me cry in the airport the first time I heard it. I don't care if you call me a pussy for it. It was amazing. So, suck a dong. Starting with Smile, do you like pop-punk gent metal with a mix of emotional havoc? Well, look no further, babes. The singing in this song is almost depressing in the verses due to how much the singer seems like she's distressed and angry. She's like screaming and almost borderline crying and pleading. It's really depressing, like I said. And there's an interpretive genty opera breakdown with laughing after these sort of verse-chorus sections come on. And it's fucking horrifying. Like, if there's a way to show musical horror, this is a good way to do it. And then there's a nice solo to bring us back from that evil shit. However, this also sets up my second favorite motif of my favorite song, which is called Nostalgia, which comes next, which is fucking perfect. And now we shall jump over to that song. This song's off-kilter feel phrase writing is amazing. And if you don't know what I just said there, then I'm just gonna play the main melody for you in the sort of verse, which is I think what you'd call it. But check it out. It follows the melody so good, and it truly captures what nostalgia is about in a negative way here. The motif that this song reflects from the last song truly was a dark emotion, but this song takes the motif and turns it into a feeling of hope almost. Here's the first one. And here's the newer one, which is more hopeful. As if he is reliving the emotion wrong, and the memory tricks him into being hopeful for something that truly is haunting from the last one. And finally, onto the main phrase, it ends with my favorite motif. The solo in this is beautiful and kind of encompasses the sadness of the realization. This is the moment where you can tell he figures out that the nostalgia is a lie and tries his very best to properly cover it up with the gospel motif at the end of the phrase. However, for the first time in the album, this seems not to work, because during the synth solo, which is a very fusiony gospel groovy change section, it's like it leads him back to an evil place over and over again, where the chords start becoming brighter and more advanced and kind of cool and gospel-y. It kind of goes back to this really dark place over and over again. This ultimately leads to his full realization when the groovy-ass heavy section comes in. He is torn down and realizes the evil that lies within this nostalgia, and thus reconciles in the realization that it truly is a dark emotion. It's kind of like when you play a video game and you remember loving it and you go back and play it and you're like, no, I didn't love this. This was a horrible video game. It treated me like shit, and I don't know why I remembered enjoying it. The end of the song paints the motif from the last song more appropriately than earlier, and thus revisits and makes him learn from his endeavors. So here's the last time he does the motif, which in turn sounds more like the first time we heard it in the last song. Second to last song is Wrinkle Maze, which is fucking beautiful. This is the one that I told you almost made me cry. We kind of get the Scottish feel back again later in the song, but this one with a different motif that almost perfectly reflects the song's title. The realization of nostalgia from the last song has left him broken, silenced and down. And as the song develops, the chords keep hinting at a brightness from the evil. But how can you make good of the evil when it is a part of yourself? The pretty chords hint a brighter future from this entire rush of emotions. It ties into the title because the wrinkles may be a direct happening from the evil memory. And when the song gets heavy, it's almost as if he's trying to triumphantly overcome the evil, and does so. The confusion within the nostalgia of the last song is the maze here, and the wrinkles are the experiences and growth from which made him his own person. Now listen to what I just said, and go listen to Smile, Nostalgia, and Wrinkle Maze in order, and tell me that doesn't just astound you. He conveyed such complex emotion without words. That almost never happens. And then finally we have the conclusion of the album, which is Daydreamers. This is a bonerific outro, and it functions as a nice resolution musically and lyrically, almost as a wise tale between the two vocalists. They kind of hint back at the sections that kind of take you back over the sadness of what's happened over the album, but it's a brighter outlook overall, and it's really nice. So again, I definitely recommend you listen to this entire album, or 3 EP album, or whatever you want to call it. It's truly phenomenal, and I think it's one of the best works that has ever been done. I've listened to David's other later works after this, and I don't really put them near close to the same pedestal, though they're not bad. They just don't experiment as much as this one did. But if you'd like to check them out, I definitely recommend it, because David is a very talented writer and guitar player. That's all for this review on RN Studios Reviews Albums. I'm going to be probably doing another one, which is going to tear an album apart. Which really all I'll have to do is go to the iTunes most recently added albums of the month, and I'll probably find one within the first minute. I'm Aaron Hanson again, and remember, make good music or I'll kill you.